Hello and welcome to another Critical Hit Wargaming speed painting guide. Today we're going to move to the Heretic Astarte side. We're going to paint some word bearers in a metallic red scheme. First things first, undercoat your model with lead belcher spray or gunmetal if you're using army painter. Next you're going to switch to basilicanum grey, or you can use Nuln Oil if you don't have basilicanum grey, and we're going to put that all over the model and really bring that silver down. Be sure to be liberal with your application, but make sure it doesn't pool too much in the recesses or any flat areas, and then after that we're going to bring it back up. This is going to create some nice highlights on the silver and mean we can move straight onto the red without having to come back to the silver and do anything to it. Once all that layer is dry, you're going to switch to Stormhost Silver. We're going to use a standard dry brush and we're going to dry brush all over the model to make sure that we catch all of those raised areas and highlight that lead belcher. As you can see, despite being a really simple method, it's given us some really nice highlights straight away. Next we're going to use Flesh Tearer's red contrast paint, and we're going to paint all of the armour, ignoring the silver trim. Now you need to remember to be nice and careful doing this stage. However, if you do make any mistakes, you can use lead belcher to touch up any areas where you've overspilled slightly. Once that's done, you're going to have a nice deep red for our word bearer Space Marine. We're going to get our Black Templar next, and we're going to paint in all of the shoulder pads. We're going to paint in the little joint between his armour, and we're also going to paint his gun and chainsword casing. There's also a few vents and pipes, and also the cross strap on his breastplate. We're going to paint those in using Black Templar as well. With that stage finished, we've got a nice grimdark looking word bearer Space Marine here. And what we're going to move on to now is painting in some of the extra details on the model. And for that, we're going to start with Runelord Brass. If you haven't got that, you can use Balthazar Gold or any kind of brassy looking colour. And we're going to paint in the bolts hanging out of his bolt pistol. Once you're done with that, switch to Retributor Armour. We're going to paint in the gold trim on the bolt pistol and on his chainsword. You may notice that that gold looks quite stark against the rest of the model, but it actually adds a bit of colour to it. So now we're going to switch to Abaddon Black, and we're going to paint in the cloth that's hanging between his legs that we couldn't use Black Templar for because that would have left a metallic colour underneath, and we don't want the cloth to be metallic. Just make sure you don't get it on any of the chainmail, and remember to do round the back. After that, switch to Rhinox Hide, and we're going to paint in all of the leather details, which will be his holster and any leg straps and the belt going round his middle. With that done, switch to White Scar, and we're going to paint in the eye lenses, so be nice and careful here. If you do happen to overrun, just correct it with lead belcher and then repaint over it. Next we're going to use Beeltang Green. What we're going to do with that is put it in the eye socket, and it's going to give the lens the impression that it is glowing. Get your Agrax Earthshade out and put that all over the leather details and all over the gold. Next, get your Morghast Bone and paint in any bone areas. Normally these are sticking out of the armour, so just find them wherever they are and paint them in with this colour. Once you've done all of those, give those a blast of Agrax Earthshade as well to bring out all the detail. Now it's time to base the model. I'm going to switch to Rhinox Hide and I'm going to paint all over the base, and that's because we're going to use some of the Games Workshop crackling texture paints, and that needs a base color underneath so that when the cracks show, the paint doesn't just show silver underneath, which would look really strange. Obviously you can base these according to your army, but I'm going to use a Grelin Earth, and that's going to give me a desert style base. As I've said before in previous videos, if you're painting a dark model, generally you want a light base to make your model stand out, or if you're painting a light model, you want a dark base. That is, however, more of a guide than a rule, so you absolutely don't have to stick to it. It's just a good way of making your model stand out. In this case, I'm just painting some Grelin Earth over the model. Not too thick a layer, but also not so thin that it doesn't actually crackle properly. Once it's dry, it'll look something like this, a nice crackly effect, giving us an arid desert looking base. Now we're going to use some Morghast bone to bring out the detail. Put a little bit of Morghast bone on your brush, get it off using a bit of kitchen paper or cardboard or whatever you're using, and then just rub it all over the top of your base to make sure you get all of that detail. So that dry brushing has brought out all of that detail. It's looking pretty nice and deserty now, for lack of better words, and now it's time to paint the rim. You can paint it whatever colour you want. I'm going to go with black, so I'm going to use a Baden black, and I'll have to do a couple of coats of that over the top of the lead belcher spray, and that's going to make it nice and bold. That final layer drying, that is our Wordbearer Space Marine finished. What we need to do now is put a transfer on the shoulder. Now, we've not covered this in any of the videos so far, but we're going to go through it now. So get your transfers, get a knife and cut round it nice and carefully. It's a common misconception that these are actually really hard to apply. They're not at all. I'm going to do a separate video on it anyway, so people can learn how to do it without using microset and microsol and all the other chemicals you need. All you actually need is some tweezers, your transfers, some water and some varnish. Once you've cut out your transfer, hold it in some water with some tweezers for about 30 seconds. You don't want to do it much longer than that because it will fall off the paper and sink to the bottom of your pot. 30 seconds should be plenty. Once you've done that, slide it with a paintbrush onto your model and maneuver it around until you are happy with its placement. Now bear in mind, on a curved surface like a shoulder pad, it's not going to lie flat, but just get it as flat as you can and then leave it, because the next stage will kind of bind it to the model. And so with it all placed nicely, we're going to switch to Munitor and Varnish. Now if you don't have a can of this, definitely buy some, because it not only protects your model, but it is great for applying transfers. So what I'm doing here is all I'm doing is just spraying it over the model after giving it a good shake, straight over the top of the now dry transfer. And what it does is it makes the transfer shrink, and it will shrink and bind to whatever surface it's on and have a smooth looking finish, so it looks like they're not two separate textures, that they are all one. And not only that, but it will also fit and stick to whatever shape it's on top of. It is the best thing I've ever discovered in my entire life, with the exception of my wife, in case she watches this. Anyway, that is our Wordbearer's Chaos Space Marine done. As you can see, it's a nice metallic red, it's a nice grimdark looking style, and it's very quick to paint. You can get them bashed out in not a lot of time at all. As always, if this has been helpful for you, please do like and subscribe. Put in the comments what other stuff you'd like to see, and I will paint it and get it up and running. Hopefully, with my Dominion box arriving in a couple of weeks, I'll paint up as much of that as I can as quickly as possible and show you how to do the same.